Since moving into the new building, Daniel felt that something about it was different. The place had an old-world charm, with classic details that harkened back to another era. The elevator, in particular, caught his attention, an antique model with a grated door and a metallic sound that echoed through the building every time it was used. It was in this setting that he met the woman who would change his life. Every morning, when Daniel stepped into the elevator to go to work, she was there. Well-dressed, with a calm smile and a faint perfume that filled the space. At first, he thought it was just a coincidence, but the frequency of their encounters began to feel like more than that. She always seemed to know the exact moment he would descend. Daniel couldn't help but wonder, who was she? After a few weeks, he decided to break the silence. "Good morning. Do you also work nearby?" She looked at him with a smile that seemed to know all his secrets. "Not exactly. I've lived here for a long time." "And you?" Daniel explained that he was new to the building, and the conversation flowed surprisingly naturally. She seemed to know exactly what to say to keep the moment light and pleasant. But there was something in her gaze that intrigued him, a mix of sweetness and melancholy. In the days that followed, their encounters continued, always at the same time. What had once been a shy flirtation began to turn into a connection. Daniel realized that her presence in the elevator made his mornings less mundane. However, the more they talked, the more he felt that something was off. She never mentioned personal details, like her apartment number or what she did for a living. She seemed like a carefully reserved person. One morning, as they spoke, Daniel noticed that the elevator seemed slower than usual. It was as if time slowed down when they were together. "This elevator is quite peculiar, don't you think?" he asked casually. She chuckled softly. "It's old, but it holds many stories. Some, perhaps, are better left untold. You want to know where this story is going, don't you? Then before we continue, if you want to help our channel keep bringing amazing stories, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed it, turn on notifications to find out when new videos are posted." Her response lingered in Daniel's mind. What did she mean by that? Determined to learn more, he asked the building's concierge about the mysterious woman. To his surprise, the concierge frowned. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't know anyone matching that description." That left him unsettled. How could someone he saw every morning in the elevator be unknown? Daniel began paying closer attention to details. He decided to try something, change his schedule. The next morning, he left earlier, thinking he would avoid her. But to his surprise, when he opened the elevator door, there she was. "You're very punctual," he commented, trying to mask his discomfort. She simply smiled and changed the subject, as she always did when something personal came up. Daniel began to feel torn. On one hand, he was fascinated by her. On the other, something inside him screamed that something was wrong. Days went by, and the woman's presence became an enigma. He started discreetly asking his neighbors, but no one seemed to know who he was talking about. Then one night, he met Mrs. Irene, an elderly neighbor who had lived in the building for decades. When he described the woman, Irene turned pale. "Oh my God, you're talking about Laura? But that's impossible. Laura died years ago." Daniel's heart raced. "Died? How?" Irene explained that Laura had been a young resident of the building who had suffered a tragic accident. She fell down the elevator shaft after returning from a party about 15 years ago. The story had made headlines at the time but was eventually forgotten. Daniel didn't know what to think. Could it be possible that the woman he flirted with every morning was the same Laura? He spent the night researching the story. He found old news articles that confirmed what Irene had said. To his horror, the photos of the young woman in the newspapers were unmistakable. It was her. The woman he spoke to every day in the elevator was the same one who had died in the building years ago. Daniel couldn't sleep. He needed to confront her. The next morning, he stepped into the elevator, his heart pounding. Laura was there as always, with the same serene smile. "I know who you are," he said, trying to steady his trembling voice. For the first time, she seemed surprised. Her eyes lost their usual brightness, and she replied in a low tone, "You shouldn't be asking those questions, Daniel." The elevator lights flickered, and the space felt tighter than ever. The air grew heavy, and the elevator stopped between floors. Daniel pressed the buttons, but nothing happened. He looked at Laura, whose expression had turned serious and somber. "Sometimes, it's better to leave the past where it belongs," she said, before vanishing before his eyes. Daniel froze. The elevator began to move again, but he descended in complete silence, trying to comprehend what had just happened. After that day, Daniel started avoiding the elevator. He took the stairs whenever he could, but the building seemed unwilling to let him forget. Doors slammed shut on their own, and soft laughter echoed through the halls. One day, he found a letter slipped under his door. The handwriting was delicate. "Thank you for remembering me. Now I can rest." The letter left him with a mix of relief and fear. Who had written it? Was it Laura, thanking him for acknowledging her existence? Daniel never found a definitive answer. The elevator returned to normal, but for him, it was never the same. And while no one else in the building seemed to know who Laura was, Daniel knew he would never forget the woman who appeared every morning in the elevator and revealed a secret that should have remained hidden. Want to know more about this story and many others we still have to share? Then don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Every day, a new story comes straight from our mysterious archive, filled with tales and accounts we've gathered from various sources. Cases with stories that will give you chills. Also, don't forget to share this video with that friend of yours who loves a good mystery.